Powered by Riverside FM.
Authority, the police, the city, Americans, judges, multinational corporations, public schools, fox hunters, generals, class traitors, and moderates. This was one possible list, but if you want to, you can choose another list. Minority groups, unions, Russia, weirdos, demonstrators, welfare spongers, meddlesome clergy, peaceniks, the BBC, strikers, social workers, communists, and, of course, moderates. These two lists were suggested by the actor John Cleese in a 1987 skit designed to satirize extremism. He intended them to illustrate that extremists at either end of the political spectrum both identify groups of others to effectively be their enemies. If you were on the hard left, your enemies include authority, the police, the city, etc., i.e., the first list, whereas on the hard right, your enemies are minority groups, unions, the BBC, etc., the second list. His point in the skit was that by identifying other groups as enemies is an easy way of feeling good about yourself and your own beliefs, and that more broadly, identification of a common enemy helps to simplify the world and hold together adherents of a particular ideology. You can blame the other groups for all of the world's ills. If only they wouldn't meddle so much, or they weren't so lazy, or they would just mind their own business. This is particularly true if you're part of an extremist belief system, whether that's as an individual or part of a relevant authority. You can adopt such a worldview and profess it as an ideology, or if you are part of an authority, you can even enact it, for example, as a fascist government. I thought of this particular skit having recently seen the stage show of Wicked, which is also now a two-part film. It's a family-friendly story set in a world adjacent to The Wizard of Oz, but the subtext of the story is primarily about creating narratives around enemies in order to promote cohesion and obedience amongst the population. In the context of Wicked, low-level spoiler alert, the enemy groups are primarily animals that can talk. And while, sadly, that group doesn't map directly onto today's fractious politics, the sentiment of it does. But one other key aspect of John Cleese's skit is the addition of the group of moderates to both lists. Whether you're on the hard left or the hard right, this group was included in the list of enemies. This kind of makes sense. Extremists, who by definition have strong views, and strong views that their point of view is either the best or the one true approach, will largely feel critical of moderates and feel as critical of them as they do of those at the other end of the spectrum. Moderates are being equivocal. They are not taking a view, and anyone who doesn't agree with the extremist's viewpoint is wrong in their eyes. Let's take a look at a quick example. Generally speaking, most people would put Keir Starmer, the current UK Prime Minister, somewhere in the middle of the political spectrum, a form of moderate. However, he does seem to invoke strong views. The current polling seems to show many people think he is one of the worst prime ministers ever, although, on the other hand, quite a few people describe him as variations of a decent man doing his best in difficult circumstances. But regardless of your overall view, it's objectively true that he has certainly flip-flopped on a number of major issues. This is not the sign of a conviction politician, but it could be the sign of a moderate. Moderates can lack conviction, and these kind of criticisms of moderates have some validity. Lacking conviction can also manifest in a lack of action, and, in some circumstances, by doing nothing, this is basically being an enabler and letting ongoing injustices or ongoing harms or ongoing errors perpetuate. Certainly, in the past, there are many issues where moderation, including from the majority, has restricted the speed of social change, including, for example, on issues around civil rights or oppression of minorities. So moderation certainly has some downsides. But on the other hand, moderation has a lot of advantages. The benefits tend to be an openness to evidence and reconsidering one's views, an ability to engage in dialogue in the form of mediation in a spirit which can help to alleviate or mend divisions, and the ability to balance views that can lead to an acceptable outcome for all rather than just for a minority. Interestingly, choice theory will tell you that in most issues, by definition, the views of the median voter ought to come through as being the decisive and final outcome on most issues. This can work to yield acceptable outcomes, particularly where it's an issue which can be presented on a scale, perhaps something like a tax rate. However, it doesn't really work for binary issues where society has to choose one way or the other, and one side is bound to be upset and the other will not be. Does this take us back to re-evaluating political systems themselves and the merits of a proportional representation system, which promotes a degree of moderation in the outcomes, compared to a first past the post system, which can lead to greater extremism, but can be more effective in getting things done? It does to an extent, but even if you were in favour of proportional representation system, that only helps moderation in the ultimate outcomes. It doesn't help to temper any of the risks of extremism amongst the individuals and political parties themselves. Which is a long way of saying, I don't think I've solved it. Which takes me back to the beginning. I think I should prepare my own list of enemies. Let's see now. Number one is